talk about Karen skipping the reunion. So in case you missed it, the reunion for Real Housewives of Potomac filmed last week, and Karen Huger was not there. At first, people on social media were really upset. They were all commenting, where's Karen, where's Karen? And halfway throughout the day, or like at 4 or 5 o'clock, we found out that through a statement that Karen entered rehab. Apparently, there was another article that was released on Friday saying that she had been in rehab for a couple of weeks. So it wasn't like she went to rehab the morning of the reunion. I'm actually kind of annoyed at the conversation that I'm seeing on Reddit and on other social media about Karen because I feel like there is a weird double standard. At the beginning of the season, I made a post and I said I had a weird feeling that we were going to have a double standard between the way that Karen was treated and the way that Shannon was treated. And obviously, the situations are very different. I think the videos that came out were very, very, very bad. And like, I made another video a couple of weeks ago saying that it was horrific and like Karen needs to take accountability. Like, she needs to own up to the fact that what she did was like deeply fucked up and just like move on by taking responsibility and saying, I'm gonna get help. Because like, there have been rumors for years that Karen struggles with her drinking, right? Obviously, none of us are God or like judges. We can't sit here and like declare her an addict, right? And I think one of the hardest parts about addiction is that you have to accept it for yourself, right? Like, no one can get sober for anyone. No one can get clean for anyone. It is very, very like a personal decision and a personal journey. And for Karen to not admit it for 10 years on the show and then get into this DUI and still not admit it and then have those videos come out and still not admit it. Anyway, for me, I think that going to rehab is the first step of like a lifelong journey. And obviously, what I'm seeing, and I'm not going to screenshot it because I have been getting really mad, on Reddit especially, is a lot of people being like, this is fake. Karen is only doing this so that no one will ask her questions at the reunion. And I'm like, you guys, this is bigger than Andy Cohen, like being like, Karen, why'd you get behind the wheel of a car, right? Or like Giselle or Ashley being mean to her. At this point, Karen is going to be sentenced at the end of the month, right? Like, her actual life is in peril. Like, I'm not even being dramatic. She could be sentenced. I'm not a lawyer, famously. But she could be sentenced to like years in prison, right? Like, this is not a game anymore. This isn't like, oh, I'm gonna go to rehab so like Andy Cohen's not mean to me, right? At this point, she has to be showing real accountability for her actions, and rehab is the first step of that. A lot of what I'm seeing on social media is people saying that Karen is a criminal and she is like avoiding responsibility. And for me, it's like rehab is the responsibility. Like, what are we talking about here? Looking at the different treatments of wives who have skipped the reunion, so these three, and wives that have had trouble with addiction, so all four of these, the situation with Shannon feels like the most one-to-one comparison, right? When you think about like the fact that they were both in DUIs. Something that annoyed me about the fandom was that after like 2 episodes, everyone just forgave Shannon, right? The whole drama of the season was Tamra attacking Shannon, calling her a drunk, and Shannon screaming, crying, freaking out, and being like, I'm not a drunk, right? Shannon's accountability for all of us watching this video, Shannon's version of accountability was crying, saying, I feel really bad about what I did, and then crying about not being able to go to Mexico for 10 years and crying about not being able to take her daughter to college. That is not like the height of accountability. She did not join a program. She never stopped drinking. She was forced to put a breathalyzer in her car, and the entire fandom on Reddit acted like this was the patron saint of alcoholism, that she had changed all her ways and she had never drank again, and she was like doing penance, like actual Catholic penance for her actions, when all she did was cry about how her actions affected her. And you guys know, famously, I hate losers, and Shannon is loser number 1, so she's always gonna be on my shit list. But she drove her car into a wall and then cried about how she couldn't take her daughter to college, and people were like, how dare anyone ever bring up her drinking? And it's like, well, she didn't do anything about it, right? She cried and went to like a 30-day program. She didn't even go to rehab. Luann went to rehab. She got arrested during the season, not for a DUI, for attacking a cop while drunk. Very different. She did end up going to rehab the next season though, because she like needed to. And obviously she wasn't penalized. She came back to the show season 11. Everything was fine. Kim skipped one of the reunions and she did like a video interview. She was able to come back to the show, but then she was fired after season 5 because like obviously she couldn't handle it and it was like too much for her. All I am saying is that, like I said in a previous video, we have had housewives who were criminals. We have had housewives who like did really, really, really crazy things and like got to keep their jobs. I think Jen Shah is the only person that's ever been convicted and like also fired. And I'm not even sure that that was because of what she did. I think it was because she was going to prison for like 9 years and they couldn't justify keeping her around. But like, I don't believe that Karen should be fired. I think that she should take responsibility. I think that she should atone more. But like, going to rehab again is the first step, right? Like, you can't fake rehab. You can't just like say that you're hanging out at someone's apartment. If she's checked into rehab, she's doing a 30-day program or hopefully a 90-day program, but like she's doing something, right? That's not something that you can like fake, right? I hope that there she gets therapy. I hope that there she gets help and she starts to like acknowledge her pattern and like what is actually wrong. But like I'm very annoyed by the fandom being like she should like be fired and she should be like thrown in the slammer and like pretending that she's not actually taking responsibility when it's like, again, for the 15th time this video, rehab is exactly what we needed from her. It's like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. And I don't want to be that person, but like there's one thing that Karen has that these three women don't have, and it is very interesting how harshly the fandom's penalizing her. Although I will also say Karen has multiple DUIs, so I can't also make that argument. But it's interesting.